From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.
What's up, Campus Live fans? It's Lane here in the Miller Waldrop Studios today to bring you another special edition of the Guns Blazin podcast. It is episode 10. Thank you all so much, for all the support that y'all have given us over these 10 episodes. And as always, I'm one of your hosts today, and alongside me for today's episode is Mr. Jett Castro again. Jett, how are you doing on this beautiful Thursday out here in Lubbock?
I'm doing well. Getting into the holiday season, we're missing Logan, yet again. But we're gonna do it for him, and have a good little pod today. Talking some football, talking some basketball. It's gonna be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. We got a jam-packed week in college football and college basketball, especially related to Texas Tech. But first, I just wanted to thank all of our sponsors here for the Guns Blazin podcast with JSI Industries and the Exceptional Community Hospital here in Lubbock. And as always, just make sure to like and subscribe to all of our videos and all of our social media platforms if you're not following us yet. And excuse me if I'm a little hoarse. I am a little under the weather today, but we push forward and we'll get through this one, Jett.
Yep.
But first off, we wanted to touch on the college football playoff bracket. We have our games, actually the first one starting tomorrow. It's going to be a really interesting week. We find out who we officially play in Miami on January 1st after this weekend. Jett, what are some of your initial thoughts on this weekend with the college football playoff starting?
Going into the first round, I really like the Oklahoma and Alabama matchup, just in terms of both head coaches and, both of them really needing this win, to kind of legitimize their time, at either of these schools, especially just how prestigious, both of them were before they came in. So, I think that's a big game storyline-wise. Ole Miss and Tulane, I just really want to see what Ole Miss is going to do throughout the CFP, obviously after losing, their head coach and kind of having a chip on their shoulder. Miami and A&M is really a toss-up for me. That one was the toughest one, I think, of this first round for me to pick. But we'll get into it more whenever we go through we got to make our bracket, so we'll go through it.
Yeah, I think we can, go ahead and kind of jump into these brackets. We officially have our college football playoff brackets. Me and Jett have made ours, and in the first round, Oregon, I think it's pretty safe to say, there is going to be some inclement weather up there. Could be some substantial rainfall that just has actually really affected the northwest region of the United States over the past few weeks. But Oregon, I think, doesn't really matter what field they're playing on. They're going to dominate this game against James Madison. They potentially could be returning all their three starting receivers with DeCorian Moore, Evan Stewart, and Gary Bryant Jr. They've missed them over this past second half of this whole year. Evan Stewart hasn't played this whole year, so that would be a huge get for Oregon if they got all three of them back. And then Oklahoma and Alabama, Jett touched on it a second ago. I think Oklahoma and their defense is just going to be a little bit too much for Alabama in this game. Alabama with Ty Simpson, he's been dealing with a back issue, and then Jam Miller, he's been banged up all year long. They have some injuries on the defense. LT Overton is their best player on that defense, and he's been battling injuries all year as well. I just think OU, they just have too much defense, and John Mateer getting healthier, Jett. I think Oklahoma pulls that one out. And then Ole Miss, I have Ole Miss beating Tulane. I think Tulane, with Jake Retzlaff at the helm, maybe they could get one last game together with John Summerall, kind of maybe put it all together for a quarter and a half. But I think Ole Miss is just way too talented.
Yeah.
And we'll speak on them later, how they potentially could be a wild card team in this whole playoff. But I think Ole Miss eventually covers and beats Tulane by a good amount. And then my most interesting game is this Texas A&M and Miami game. Jett,
yeah, for sure.
I think that A&M really they got a tough matchup with Miami, but I do think that A&M ends up winning this game in the end. I've gone back and forth on it, but I think A&M just has too much talent on the offensive side and on the defensive side, Jett. I think with the legs that Marcel Reed has, I think with their receivers, I think it's going to be a little bit too much for Miami's defense to handle. I do think Miami is going to have a lot of success on the offensive side. I think this is like a 27-24 type game where it's really close, but you see a good amount of offense. I think just A&M being at home at Kyle Field is just too much, and I think that is going to wrap up the first round with A&M beating Miami.
And so for my first round, starting off with James Madison, Oregon. I have Oregon, getting past James Madison pretty easily. Maybe James Madison has a few good little moments in there, but I think Oregon's going to run away with that one pretty quick, going into a matchup with Tech. Alabama, Oklahoma, I picked Oklahoma in that one, and like you said, the defense is just going to overtake that Alabama offense, just considering what they've done the past two games. I just don't really believe in Alabama's offense a whole lot against that defense. Moving on to Ole Miss and Tulane, like I said, I'm really interested to see what Ole Miss does. Kind of with a chip on their shoulder. I think, how you said Tulane might keep it close. Ole Miss probably runs away with that one too. Going into a really interesting matchup with Georgia. And then moving on to Miami and A&M, I picked Miami. I just don't like what I've seen from A&M, the past few outings. And I think Miami's just kind of, not that they've been laying low because there was all the CFP talk with them in Notre Dame, but they battled back for sure. They got off the mat because at a certain point it seemed like they were completely out of it, and even though they were probably the class of the ACC, but it just didn't work out for them. So I think Miami might, come out and end up getting, the upset at Kyle Field, moving on to the second round.
Yeah, I think that Miami really – their focus is really going to be on getting Malachi Toney the football and then just having the ability to run the football against A&M, because if they don't – A&M, we've seen at times this year where that offense can really explode, but I think that it's going to be a really close game. But as we move on to the quarterfinals, I do have Texas Tech moving on, beating Oregon. Whenever this game, officially goes down, I'm sure we'll have, an official prediction after Oregon beats James Madison. But as a prediction, I do have us beating Oregon in a very close game. I think it's going to be a defensive battle all game long. Oregon has one of the best defenses in the country. I think this is a game that you would see like a 20-17 type winner out there in Miami. But, man, how crazy would that be if Texas Tech were to advance to the college football semifinals? Yeah. But I'm moving on to Indiana and Oklahoma. And obviously, like I said, we'll have more on Texas Tech and Oregon that week if that ends up happening. But Indiana and Oklahoma, I do have Indiana beating Oklahoma. I think Indiana, they just have such a complete team. I know that they did lose, unfortunately, one of their best players on defense from a freak injury after celebrating the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
But
unfortunate.
Yeah, they got Fernando Mendoza. They have great receivers. They have a phenomenal defense. I think on a neutral site, I think Oklahoma, not enough offense to keep up with Indiana. I think Indiana moves past Oklahoma in that matchup. Georgia and Ole Miss, I think this is a really interesting matchup. I do have Georgia beating Ole Miss, but I definitely can see a scenario where if Ole Miss, really is just like this us against the world mentality, and Ole Miss really had a chance to win that first matchup against Georgia, and that was in Athens. I think Ole Miss can really keep this game close. I think Ole Miss can win this game. But I think Georgia with Kirby Smart, I do think not having, Lane Kiffin will have an effect eventually on Ole Miss. He is a great coach. Yeah. He was the leader of that program and that team. As much as having your coordinators back is a positive for them, I do think not having, Lane is eventually going to it's going to show. But I think Kirby, the way he motivates his team every single game, he's just the master motivator. He really is. And with Gunnar Stockton and the way that their defense has been playing, and at the end of this year, I think Georgia beats Ole Miss. And then I do have Ohio State beating A&M in the Cotton Bowl. I think that would be a really interesting matchup as well, because it would be in Arlington, and that would be basically another home game for A&M. Ohio State, they did lose this Big Ten championship. It was against Indiana, the number one team in the country now. But I just think Ohio State just has way too much defense for A&M, and I just don't think A&M would have the ability to stop Ohio State's offense. I don't think A&M's defense is good enough for that. So I do have Ohio State advancing over A&M in that, setting up all the top 4 seeds, which that could backfire on me in the semifinals. But I do have all chalk right now in the semifinals, Jett.
So for my quarterfinals, we'll start out with Tech and Oregon. I kind of want to think back to Joey's first year, whenever we were winning a lot of close games, like Houston. I think we went to OT with them, and then obviously UT. We went to OT with OU, and but like besides OU, a lot of those close games were like in the 30-27, 33-30 range, and I kind of like that's also how like that Oregon game was a couple years ago. I think what was it, like 31-23 or so? It was something like that.
It was in the 30. Yeah, 30. It was close.
So I kind of. I want to say that this is what that game is going to be, somewhere from the in the 20-30s range, and coming down to the wire, maybe walk off field goal or even like OT. So I think that's going to be a great game. I don't know if either team's going to be able to pull away. Oklahoma and Indiana, I really think Indiana, is for real. So I think Oklahoma's going to get the big win over Alabama, and then they'll kind of. They'll face reality against Indiana. So Indiana will move on to face Tech. I have Indiana and Tech in the semis. So with Ole Miss and Georgia, I actually picked Ole Miss. So I kind of we were talking earlier, and I was like, I feel like you have the same players, the same coordinators. Besides Lane, you throw them down on the field. At the end of the day, those Ole Miss players can hang with the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah. So. I wouldn't be too shocked. It'd be, pretty interesting if Ole Miss ends up, coming out with that one. They could really shake some things up. And I think that one might just end up being. I kind of want to see another shootout between them, because that was just a lot of fun the first time. Miami and Ohio State. I have Ohio State winning that one. Probably, I feel pretty handily. I don't see Miami giving Ohio State too much trouble. So. For my semifinals, it's Tech and Indiana, and then Ole Miss and Ohio State. So got a little chaos in there,
Yeah.
So let's go on.
That Ole Miss pick is, I think they could really be a wild card in this thing if they get hot.
Yeah. Perfect way to describe it.
Because they have the offense to keep up with anyone. But as we move on to the semifinals, I do have Texas Tech. Might be a homer pick going to the national championship. I just think that this Texas Tech team has such camaraderie. They believe in each other. We've seen it all year long. Best defense in the whole entire country. One of the best offenses in the whole entire country when Barron is on the field. We've seen them struggle in the red zone at times. I think that's an area where you could see us slip up against Oregon or in Indiana, whoever we play in the semifinals. But for me, I think Texas Tech, it might be destined for us to go to this national championship. I really do.
That's how I feel.
I like our path, too. I think we match up well. I think we actually match up better against Indiana than Oregon. I think if we get past that Oregon game, I think all bets are off. I really think that Indiana would have a really tough time being able to score on us. Oregon, if they have all their three receivers going, it's going to be tough for us to stop them. But I think we have that ability, too. Yeah. But I think that we beat Indiana if that's who we meet in that semifinal matchup, and then Texas Tech is in the national championship in football. I cannot believe that I'm actually saying that. But, man, how crazy would that be to be right back in Miami just 2 weeks after we beat Oregon? And then I do have Ohio State versus Georgia. I really have gone back and forth on this because I think the winner of this game, a little foreshadowing, I do think the winner of this game wins the national championship. We saw that kind of, a few years ago, that semifinal game against Georgia and Ohio State. It was New Year's Eve, and then the clock struck 12, and Ohio State's kicker shanked it.
Just threw that.
Had a chance to beat Georgia, and then Georgia obviously went on to beat TCU in the championship. But I think this would be maybe the game of the year. The two probably most powerhouse programs in the whole country.
I was about to say, that's one where you can use the logos on the helmet, and you know it's going to be really good.
Even though Georgia, I think they might be the hottest team besides, us and Texas Tech right now in Indiana, I do think Ohio State just has a little bit – they have a better defense than Georgia, and I think that they have so many weapons on the outside. We have seen Georgia's defense get exploited by guys like Ole Miss, with a good receiving core. Tennessee did it earlier on in the year. I know Georgia's playing better now, but with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, Max Clare at tight end, I think that's a game Ohio State exploits Georgia, and then Ohio State and Texas Tech would meet in the national championship, Jett.
I also have the same result in the Natty. So for my semifinals, I have like I said, Texas Tech versus Indiana 1v4, and then Ole Miss and Ohio State. So with Tech and Indiana, that one seems more of like one of those. Texas Tech going into Ames, you know, and in a freezing cold temperature and winning like 14-10 or something like that.
Right.
Something like that. So I think that'll be a really interesting matchup, Tech and Indiana. But like kind of like you said, it just seems like unless something kind of goes horribly wrong, the script seems set up for Tech to be, you know, playing for a national championship. So yeah, I think this one will be low scoring. I got Tech going over the Hoosiers. You know, upset number one. And then for Ole Miss and Ohio State, I think Ole Miss's, you know, I guess Cinderella run for me comes to an end right there. I think Ohio State, you know, takes care of business. I think the loss to Indiana was kind of good for them. You know, they didn't really get affected too much by you know, in the rankings, and they kind of got that punch in the mouth that everyone kind of needs. You know, and it helped them last year. So I think Ohio State gets back to the Natty, and it'll be Tech versus Ohio State in the national championship. So.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, last year we saw, you know, losing to Michigan is different than losing to Indiana. Obviously, that rivalry is so big, but we saw how motivated Ohio State came out of that.
Yeah.
I hope we don't see that soon.
And then the way they lost, you know, it was just like a missed chip shot. Like, you know, they got to feel horrible about that, you know.
They were a 21-point favorite at home versus Michigan and blew that. And then obviously, you know, kind of similarly against Indiana, had a 25-yard field goal that they just missed to tie the game at the end. So I wouldn't want to see a motivated Ohio State for sure, but I do think that's actually the matchup you will see in the national championship. And I do think this is where our season for the Red Raiders, unfortunately, would come to a end, so to speak. I mean, it is technically the last game of the year, so it ends anyway. But
regardless,
I do think Ohio State does repeat as national champions. Their defense is just 5 first-round picks on their defense. They have maybe the 2 best receivers in the country, a guy that was up for the Heisman Trophy, an amazing O-line. Ryan Day and them, they've been there. They just won it last year. They know what it takes. I think they're just going to be too tough of a matchup for us. I think our defense would hold up well against their offense, but I would see our offense having trouble scoring on Ohio State. But you know, Indiana just did beat Ohio State, so, you know, if we beat Indiana, you know, maybe we could see a similar game like that. But I think, you know, Ohio State kind of wakes up from that loss. You know, they've been blowing everyone out all year long, and then have that wake-up call. I think Ohio State does defeat Texas Tech in the national championship, Jett.
So you have Ohio State repeating, huh?
I do.
Dang. So throwing us back to 2019 with some runner-up heartbreak, huh? So, yeah, I also have Texas Tech, Ohio State, national championship. I did not pick Ohio State. I think, like I said earlier, I just feel like this something about it, you know, I feel like the script has been written, you know, and just everything we did, you know, in the portal, then you know, it worked out, like, for once for Texas Tech fans, you know, it worked out. And I would honestly like to see in the national championship if it was this matchup, kind of like you said about like the offense struggling. I think that would be like the perfect opportunity for Barron to just come out, you know, just show out and have the offense actually like do it for you, you know, in the whole year. It's been all about the defense. I think that'd be really cool. And that's what I'm actually going to predict, you know, is that Barron comes out, throws 3 or 4 touchdowns, you know, Cam Dickey runs all over them, and then the defense handles business, and Texas Tech brings home their first national championship in football. We got to emphasize in football, you know, like every time, I feel like. So, I think that'll be a great game too. I don't see a low scoring game in that one either. I think we'll both be able to get some points on the board.
Man, if Texas Tech won a national championship in football, I can't even. We thought the basketball was crazy in Lubbock.
I don't know. We might fill up the stadium again for a parade, dude. Like, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. I don't know. So yeah, we had a pretty close bracket, huh?
Yeah,
not too far off.
I think it's. I think it really comes down to a few things, you know, especially for Tech. It's going to be, which I hate putting all the, you know, like, not pressure, but if Barron and the offense executes in the red zone, we've said it all year, we can beat anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, you've seen it against Utah. We didn't really struggle in the red zone, but the last 2 times we played BYU, we really have, honestly. That's a scenario where if you convert those into touchdowns, our defense, you know, it's not like they're just Big 12.
It could be over early.
It could be a scenario where we just are sitting on leads and just
Yeah.
running the clock out for the rest of the
Because
game.
a lot of the time it's like it's pretty close up until like the end of the third quarter, and then that defense kind of overtakes and we end up running away by 20 plus. But yeah, I think if we could just play a good first quarter, so 2 quick scores or something, yeah, we could be sitting on a lead for a good while.
Yeah, and our offensive line too. I think our offensive line is going to be huge in the playoffs. They've been tested, and in the games that they have been tested in, I've been impressed. The one game where they didn't play their best was the Arizona State game where we ended up losing, obviously. But that they're technically their 3 toughest games: the 2 versus BYU and then the 1 versus Utah. They really played well. I think keeping Barron healthy. Obviously, we don't have Will anymore, and we haven't for a long time.
Do we even have Mitch anymore?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's whenever you're playing a caliber team of Oregon potentially in the quarterfinals, or in Indiana or Ohio State, whoever we play down the line, Barron has to stay healthy. And that's why we wanted this bye week so bad, is to get him fully healthy. You heard Coach McGuire this week talk about, Barron, he was jumping around at practice. He hasn't seen him jump around like that since fall camp. Yeah. So getting him healthy, I think, is so key. Keeping him upright, the offensive line performing well, having the ability to keep running the football. Whenever we run the football like at will, that's also too when we really become unstoppable, because having that ball control, letting our defense, stay healthy all game, where they're not just continuously on the field. Like we saw against Arizona State, that was the game where our offense just couldn't get anything going. If our defense has that lead, like we said, I mean, all bets are off for this tournament. Yeah. But Jett, you kind of already have hit on it. What's your one wild card team in this playoffs that you could see making a run?
Like all the way, or like?
I mean, just.
I guess if I want to say a team that could probably like end up pushing it pretty far, because like Ole Miss, I don't see them getting past the semis as much as that would be fun. I think A&M. A&M was so good all year, and then they just kind of slipped up there at the end, and A&M could definitely like show that form again, or return to true form, and make a run, because it's not like a very hot take, I don't think, to like kind of put them over a couple of these teams. So yeah, I'd say number 7, A&M, would be my wild card to kind of go all the way. Yeah. Sadly, because I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that.
Well, especially too if they get that second home game, Cotton Bowl. I mean, that's could be huge for them.
Stole it right from us,
I know, man. But I actually will have boots on the ground and down there in Miami.
You're gonna be out there?
I will be. So. Confirmed.
Lane will be out there.
Yeah. So
pre-game show.
If
make sure to go see
any
Lane.
of you other fans are out there making the trip, maybe we'll have a small little campus live show out there.
There you go. Yep. Just pull your phone out and go live. There you go.
But as we kind of move on from the playoff talk, we just obviously went over our brackets. A lot of the discussion right now, Jett, is the transfer portal. We've seen obviously all over social media. It's starting to pick up. And I want to do a quick segment, Jett, on some guys, our returning guys meshed with some guys that we might target in the portal. I think it's pretty obvious who one of these guys obviously is already. Yeah. But I wanted to name five or so guys at 5 different positions where kind of on our wish list for this next year. Starting off, obviously at quarterback, Barron, he's going to be graduating. Yep. Will, recovering from that ACL injury. It's Brennan Sworsby. Yeah. We already have seen all this stuff all over social media. His girlfriend is already committed to come play here volleyball. Yeah. Brennan, I think it's pretty easy to say he was the best quarterback in the Big 12 this year. He had over 2,800 yards passing. He had 36 touchdowns this year, passing and rushing. Only 5 interceptions all year long. All the advanced metrics, absolutely love him too. Yeah. He's ranked like top 5 in every metric in the country. And I think he would fit in so perfect in a Mac Leftwich system where, Barron, he's a great quarterback in the system, but Mac really loves having a guy that can use his legs too. Yeah. And I know Indiana's interested in Brendan, but sounds like he's all Texas Tech, Jett.
Yeah. Yeah, that's everything I'm seeing. It sounds like he's all Texas Tech. And, you know, he last year he came to town, and you know he threw the ball over Jones AT&T Stadium, Cody Campbell Field, dude. He kind of lit us up, and you know, we came out with the win. But I remember watching him in that game and thinking he was pretty special. So he's a hot commodity right now in the transfer portal, and I think with all the hype that Tech has, and I think just the knowledge that the college football world has for our transfers, I think he's got to see that and got to know that, and really consider us as like the top option. Especially if he's going to go somewhere else in the Big 12. If he doesn't come to Tech, I think he might get out of the conference, you know, because I don't see where else he'd go. But yeah, it'd be great if we got him, because Will's going to be rehabbing up until fall.
October.
Yeah, until October, really. So yeah, that'll be a huge get. Because do you have your eyes on any other quarterbacks, at least, if we don't get Torsby?
You've heard, you know, some rumors about, you know, like Dylan Rail. I wouldn't really want Dylan. I mean, Texas Tech said they're not interested. And then I do think a guy that Tech might be interested in is Harvard's quarterback, Jaden
really?
Craig, who is in the transfer portal, but I think he's more of a backup option. But some of the reports from other Texas Tech insiders have said they might be interested in Jaden Craig. But I think it's all Brendan Sorsby. If he doesn't go to the draft, I think it's pretty highly likely that he's going to be our starting quarterback next year. But as we kind of move on to the wide receiver position, who we're losing, you know, we are going to be losing Caleb Douglas and potentially Reggie Virgil. Reggie might get an extra year based off of the NCAA potentially granting him the 5-for-5 rule where he gets an extra year. But we are for sure losing Caleb Douglas, and I think a perfect fit, and actually I think this would be an upgrade for us at the outside position, Nick Marsh from Michigan State. This is a guy, his numbers don't pop off the screen. They're not crazy. But if you watch his tape, basically double team every single play at Michigan State. They really didn't have anyone else on this offense. He had 59 receptions, over 600 yards receiving, and 6 touchdowns. He's 6'3", 210. He can jump out the gym. He's a guy you can throw that jump ball to.
He'll go get it.
Hopefully Brennan, you know, as our quarterback, they be best buds out there on the field. And I think, once again, I think Marsh, and as good as Caleb has been this year and is at his career at Tech, I think he's a guy. Nick Marsh is a legit like top 3 round NFL talent.
Like he comes in and he's the number one.
Absolutely, he comes in, he's the number one, and he would put up so many good numbers with Brendan Sorsby at quarterback. I think he would fit in seamlessly with this offense as well, Jett. I think
that'd be awesome, because like in the best way possible, we haven't had like that true number one where it's like a true like star receiver, you know, in a little while, you know, which is good when you throw the ball over the yard. You have talented receivers everywhere, but it'd be nice to have that, you know, that stud in the, you know, in your wide receiver core. So that'd be a huge get for sure.
Yeah,
huge get.
And I think, you know, 2 other receivers, you know, you might take a look at Jace Brown and Omarion Miller from Colorado. They're really talented guys as well, too. Big 12 guys. You know, obviously Jace is at Kansas State. was at Kansas State, and then Miller, he was at Colorado. Both really talented guys. Miller is more similar to Nick Marsh in that he's a tall, big guy, jump ball type guy. Jace is more of a shiftier receiver. You know, he was a former 5-star that went to Kansas State. Really talented guy. They're going to have a ton of suitors in the country, but I think my top receiver, though, target is still Nick Marsh from Michigan State.
Yeah, that'd be great.
As we kind of move on to the offensive line, you know, really, we don't really need to hit the portal for offensive line. We should return every single starter except for Davion Carter. He will be graduating. But, you know, if we're looking to keep that position at the guard position for a veteran, you know, I know Felix Ojo is obviously coming in. He's going to want to play. He's a 5-star. Yeah. If he plays at guard, you know, maybe he starts at this position, or if he stays at tackle, I don't think he would take over Jacob Ponton or Howard Sampson's job. They've been 2 of the best tackles in the Big 12 this year. So depending on that, I do think that this is a guy that we could target at the guard position. Telek Lockett from Texas State. He's a guy that Coach Leftwich has coached already at Texas State, been one of the highest grade G5 offensive linemen over the past 2 years in the country. He's only allowed 1 sack, and on PFF he grades really well in rush blocking and pass blocking. I think this is a guy that'd be a great get, you know, just keeping that O-line veteran. not having to throw Felix Ojo into the fire, as a true freshman. He can learn from all those guys. And I think, if you bring a guy like Lockett in from Texas State, we were already going to have the best returning offensive line in the Big 12 and one of the best in the country. But
beef it up.
I think that would just make our offensive line maybe the best returning O-line in the country,
really,
bringing in the freshman talent that we are. But what are some of your thoughts on maybe bringing in some offensive line guys from the transfer portal?
Well, with our history of QB, injuries, I'm all for it for sure. I've always thought, just if we could go all in on that O-line and they got the eyes for them big boys. They did it on the defense, and there's not a whole lot of complaints from this year's O-line. So I think that'd be great to just keep investing in the O-line through the transfer portal. And Joey said that they're looking to add like 8 or 10 through the transfer portal. So they're probably gonna beef up a few positions.
Yep. And Hunter Zambrano, hopefully, he really hasn't played this year. Plan is for him to come back, but for some reason he's not able to come back, then I think he would be a great add, bringing Lockett in. But as we move on to the defense, at edge, we are going to be losing maybe the two best pass rushers in the whole country with David Bailey and Romello Height.
Yeah.
I think, this obviously is going to be a position where we are going to absolutely go into the portal and go get someone at the edge position. I think Tyler Thompson from North Carolina would fit in seamlessly here. He's another ACC guy to replace Romello Height. Height we got last year from Georgia Tech. He had like 5 sacks. Thompson actually had a better year than Height did before Romello came here. He has all the NFL traits. He's 6'4", 245, 7 sacks this year, 26 tackles, and 2 forced fumbles just this year. He was 4th in the ACC in total sacks, and I think he would be an absolutely perfect fit in Shieldwood's defense. Jett.
Yeah, I was just about to say Shieldwood would definitely probably have him playing just like Romello and David. And I think last year they got Bailey first, and then they went and got Romello afterwards, after the fact.
So Romello came in December, and then David, after Stanford's coach got fired, that's when David came in.
Because I know there was like a story where McGuire said like they were already good, and then they got wind of another great edge rusher, and they were like, yeah, why not? So maybe even something like that could pop up too, where they get greedy on that defensive line and they just they run it back. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah, and kind of shifting from edge, Tyler will be a target. There's some other guys that have entered the portal that are talented as well, but I thought that really he would fit in seamlessly. And I'm not sure if he has a previous relationship with Howard Sampson, but they were old teammates, so maybe Howard could recruit him here. But as far as the defensive tackle position, we are going to be losing Lee Hunter. Potentially Skylar Gill-Howard too. They have said they might try to throw in that redshirt waiver to the NCAA, but who knows with the NCAA. But we will have AJ Holmes coming back. But I think John Walker from UCF, maybe a Lee Hunter 2.0. That's where Lee Hunter came from. One of the best defensive tackles in the Big 12. He had 59 tackles this year, or in his career. He has had 1.5 sacks and a forced fumble, and he was a freshman All-American in 2023. So with Lee leaving, with Skylar potentially leaving, I think that bringing John Walker in from UCF would fit in perfectly alongside A.J. Holmes for next year.
I feel like UCF fans would be pretty upset with us if he turned out to be a stud too over here. They'd be like, back to back, they've stolen great defensive tackles from us. But yeah, I think I think from going forward, we've seen that the D line is going to get us there. So it's like that's got to be main concern, for through the transfer portal and then through obviously recruiting, because we have a guy in coming in too. Yeah. So then what do you think? Do you think he'll get thrown into the deep end? Or?
Absolutely. I think they'll try to, similarly with Ojo, if they try to bring in a veteran, kind of, show guy in the ropes. We should have some guys that are already in our system, kind of teaching him the system. Obviously, Shieldwood, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. I think Guyton will fit right in, but it's going to be interesting, Jay, for sure. But moving on to the secondary, I think at the corner position, if Bryce Pollock comes back, you might not see us go in the transfer portal for a corner. I think at the safety position, though, with Cole Wisniewski graduating, I think this is a position where they could go. I think Khalil Barnes from Clemson is a guy highly, highly productive over his past 3 years, over 140 tackles in his career with 7 interceptions. He did kind of have a blow up on the sidelines with Dabo this year, and then after that moment, he kind of seemed checked out for the rest of the season. So Joey and Blanche, they definitely would have to make sure he's a culture fit. They always talk about having a culture fit, and if they're not, then they won't bring him in. But Khalil is a great player, and he's going to have suitors from all over the country, Jett.
I think Dabo might just have a little trouble getting some of those players to buy into his specific culture now that it's not resulting in too many wins. The Clemson situation just seems kind of odd. So I mean, we don't know everything behind him and Dabo's little thing, but yeah, that'd be great too because I guess you'd say the weak part of our defense is the secondary, which is not in like a terrible way or anything like that, but just how good the defensive line has been. So that'd be a huge get for sure to beef up the secondary.
Yeah, and as we kind of shift our focus from football, it was a big weekend this past weekend for Texas Tech basketball. We played Arkansas at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. We did lose 93-86. Really was kind of us running out of gas and then of a lack of effort on the defensive end. You keep hearing Coach McCaslin talk about that lack of effort. But JT and C4, it kind of seems like it's been the story all year, carried us the whole game.
Yeah.
Had a combined 56 of our 86 points, and they played every single minute of the game. Toppin had 30 and 11. C4, he had 26, 11, and 4. It's just, two NBA players on our team. But, we started off the game great. We were actually up at halftime by 6. It was 49-43. But as the game went on, you could just tell Arkansas, they were the deeper team. They were a lot bigger. And Trevon Brazell in that second half at the end of the game, he completely took over, hit a few threes. And then whenever he started hitting those, guys started to jump. He started to drive into the lane. Got a few offensive rebound, put back dunks. Really, we have no one to match up with him size-wise, especially with Luke Bangboye hurt. You can see how talented we are on offense, but it's been really frustrating to watch us on defense this year. And with how thin we are in our rotations right now, Jett, it's kind of scary with Big 12 play coming up. Yeah,
it really is, especially when us as Texas Tech fans, we're just so used to our basketball team playing like high-level defense, and it's kind of a shock to see all of this, But yeah, I think whenever you're just like relying on JT and Christian to do all the work on offense, they're gonna be gassed on the other side of the court when they're trying to defend, and it's not working out, And even this last game, they let a non-conference opponent just kind of shoot all over them and go crazy, So they got to step up the defense, like you said. Grant McCaslin just says it's not acceptable either, especially going into Big 12 play because we don't even start off, like I guess easy as you. The Big 12 is never easy, in any capacity. You can play the bottom team, and it's going to be a tough one. So yeah, they're gonna have to figure it out pretty quick, and then going to Duke.
Yeah, we'll touch on that game too later, but kind of like you said. Giving up 90 points to Northern Colorado is crazy.
Pretty humbling, yeah.
I know they're a decent mid-major, but thankfully Lawan Watts went crazy. Because
12 of 13. Like, imagine he doesn't, like, almost shoot perfect and, like, almost hit 40 points. It's like, golly.
Thankfully he did, and, I just hope that switch turns on defense because offensively we are really talented. We really are. We might even be more talented than we were last year on the offensive side, but – defensively, with the effort and the depth with the injuries right now, it's just tough, kind of tough to watch. But that'll kind of move us into our injury report segment, sponsored by Exceptional Community Hospital here in Lubbock. Fans, it's time for this week's injury report, presented by the Exceptional Community Hospital. Before we hop into the injury report, we just want to take a moment to recognize Exceptional Community Hospital as a proud sponsor of Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcast. And be sure to visit their 24/7 state-of-the-art hospital and ER located at 6401 Spur 327 here in Lubbock. They accept all insurances and have a short ER wait time. Exceptional Community Hospital is proud to support this week's injury report on Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcast. This is our first injury report for the basketball team. We've been doing football every week, but obviously we don't play this week, and a big week for our basketball team against Duke this Saturday. Luke Bangboye has been battling injuries all year, and he got hurt against Northern Colorado this past week, and apparently it was not good. according to various sources around the program, and Coach McCaslin said it didn't look great initially. So, I'm not going to speculate and say exactly, what we've heard, what it could potentially be, but that would be a devastating loss to this team, Jett.
Yeah, just and how you were saying, just in rebounding alone, we need some size, down low, and you want a player like that to be 100%, going into conference play, and it doesn't sound like he's very close to that. So, yeah, it's the basketball team's got a lot of soul searching to do right now for sure.
Yeah, hopefully, it was just a scare, and maybe just it was a non-contact knee injury, so
Yeah,
that's always
very
scary. But hopefully we get some good news, and maybe he could play sometime soon. But because Mario Lekuntak, our other big, he's battling a knee injury right now as well. So really, our only other option is a true freshman Latrell Hoover, who really has not. I don't even know if he's played this year yet. So
yeah.
But Grant said, he's going to be trying out other options for guys to see who gives effort on defense, who can play. Because on offense, you can't take JT, Christian, or Lawan off the court right now because, Donovan, he's played well also, but, he not the greatest on the defensive side. Kind of reminds me of Kerwin Walton a little bit. He's more athletic than Kerwin, but, Kerwin was a three-point specialist, and then we take him off, bring a defensive guy like Kevin Overton in last year.
Yeah.
But, man, it's going to be really interesting to see how Grant balances all these injuries, too, because Josiah Mosley was supposed to be a contributor as well from Villanova, and he's been hurt since this summer. So, and who knows when we'll see him, too. So, going to be really interesting because that will take us really into our Duke preview. And fans, this Saturday we actually will have a live show at Golf Suites, so make sure to come out if you want to come support us. We'll start at 6 p.m. The game starts at 7 p.m., but make sure to come out and come watch our live show with me and Jett. We'll be discussing the Duke game, and we'll give our predictions for that game. But right now we will just preview what is going to be probably our toughest matchup all year, maybe.
Yeah.
Duke, they are 11-0. Everyone knows Duke basketball. They're a powerhouse. They're the most recognizable logo in all of college basketball. We all know the history. They are 11-0 this year with wins already over Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, Florida, and at Michigan State. They're top 5 in KenPom right now with a top 5 offensive rate and defensive rate, and their defense is actually rated higher than their offense, which is pretty hard to believe, especially with potential number 1 overall pick Cameron Boozer, who has absolutely been playing out of his mind. He's averaging 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. And alongside him, their guard play with Isaiah Evans and Caleb Foster, 2 of the best three-point shooters in the country. And then they have their big center inside with Patrick Ngongba, who has been a great player for them as well. He's a great defensive center. And like I said, we won't have a prediction right now, but Jett, this is going to be an extreme uphill battle for this short-handed Texas Tech team.
Yeah. And what would you take the over under of us scoring 80 points?
I would take the under.
You take the under for that one? Yeah.
I would. Yeah.
I see. I think if we're gonna sit down and preview, Tech's got to score as much as they can for sure, and you just play any sort of defense, and hopefully a few missed shots on Duke's side too. But yeah, how you said, it's gonna be a uphill battle. But Lawan had a great game. Last game maybe he'll come out and be on the same hot streak and take a little bit of the load off of JT and Anderson. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, obviously we'll discuss this game more on Saturday, but we'll discuss our predictions like I said on Saturday. But we do have some paving the way to victory. Some keys to victory that Texas Tech will have to do versus Duke on Saturday. Fans, JSI Services is proud to sponsor this week's Paving the Way to Victory for the Guns Blazin podcast. Be sure to visit their website at jsiservicesllc.com to learn about their asphalt and paving services, their earth and dirt works, concrete and gutter paving, crack fill, seal, and coating, and their stripping services. And thank you so much to JSI Services for their proud support of Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcast. First, Jett, I think this is a game where we have to shoot lights out from the three-point range.
Yeah.
We have to give ourselves all the offensive opportunities that we can, because like we saw against Purdue when we lost against 30 plus or however many it was against them, we shot terribly from the 3-point line, and it really not only did it defeat us, I felt like mentally in that game where our effort just went down on the offensive end. That's when Purdue went on their crazy run on our defense, and to keep this game close, we have got to be able to shoot well from the outside. And I think that first, this is going to be really paramount, Jett.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great, shades of last year's team. We just shoot the ball all over the place. But yeah, I agree. I think we're going to have to, get those points anywhere we can get it. Yeah,
because if we don't knock down our open looks,
I mean,
this game's not going to be close.
Yeah.
But second, I think Duke, they're not the biggest transition team offensively, which is kind of the opposite of what Arkansas was. So maybe speeding them up on the defensive end, maybe hitting them with a press earlier in the game, just trying to throw anything off. We actually saw that press be sort of effective against Arkansas at the end of that game, forcing some turnovers. We've got to force them into 15 plus turnovers, because we've got to be able to create more points on us for the offensive side.
Yeah, we've got to show some intensity, and be jumping on those loose balls and fighting for jump balls and all of that stuff, because it's going to count, at the end of the day. And like you said, with the Purdue game, you can't that game was fine in the first little bit, and then we just decided to stop making shots, and they didn't. They kept making them. So as long as you don't have a spurt like that, I think we have a puncher's chance in this. But you're gonna have to show some high intensity on the defensive end, and not let them just have their way.
Yep. Third, this is my last one. I think preventing offensive rebounds for Duke. I think we beat Illinois and potentially Arkansas if we rebound better, but unfortunately with our size right now, with the injuries, it's going to be extremely tough to do. Duke is one of the best rebounding teams in the country. They're a really big team. But, even if we do get out-rebounded, once again, what I really think Grant wants to see is just the effort in doing so, putting in that effort on the defensive end while also going up and grabbing a rebound, boxing a guy out with intensity, not just letting him go around you or above you. I think that preventing Cameron Boozer from having 20 rebounds in this game, because if he does, once again, this game will not be close.
It'll get ugly quick, huh?
Yeah, but as we kind of move on to some other games that are going to be going on around the country, we do have 3 games that we picked out. St. John's versus Kentucky. Jett, you want to kind of start us off for that matchup?
Are we picking these, or
we'll just preview?
Just preview them.
Yeah.
I hadn't got to watch a whole lot of Kentucky, so I was pretty surprised when Ralph was checking them out and seeing a few of their losses. But I think this is going to be a good matchup. Big East and SEC. This is not like the challenge or anything, right?
No. Yeah.
Well, the Big East does the Big 12, right? They don't even do the Big East and SEC.
They have in the past few years, but
okay.
I think, it
might be Big East, Big 12 now. I think
it might. Yeah, I'm not
just
sure.
Alone, but that'll be a great matchup right there. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think 2 teams with big preseason expectations, especially St. John's with the guys they returned. They did lose R.J. Lewis, but they got a bunch of guys in the portal, and Kentucky too. They got a bunch of guys in the portal as well, but they're actually unranked right now, so. Got a chance to get a ranked win versus St. John's. St. John's, they have some really talented guys with Bryce Hopkins, Ian Jackson, and Ruby Ezefor, and they're a really talented team. I just think that this is going to be we'll predict it on Saturday, but
great coaches.
I think 2 great coaches, Rick Pitino and Mark Pope, 2 great coaches in this sport. I think it's going to be a really close matchup. But the game I'm most excited for on Saturday, besides our game, Houston versus Arkansas. Mm-hmm. Houston has been the class of the Big 12 for the past few years versus a very talented Arkansas team. Obviously, we just played and lost to, but I really want to see how this one plays out, because if it could really gauge, kind of how we look at Houston. Because if Arkansas beats Houston, then we're like, man, we really should have beat a really, really good Arkansas team, and maybe we underrated them a little bit.
Yeah.
And Houston, obviously, we will play them 2 times this year, so getting to see that tape versus a common opponent, I think it's going to be a huge, Jett.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I feel like I wouldn't want to say that we're chalking up the Arkansas loss as like a bad loss, but we definitely felt like we should have won that game, So I think you're right in terms of gauging how good Houston is, and maybe even gauging how good Arkansas really is. Maybe that could turn into like a good loss. I mean, I think it still is, obviously, because they're number 14, but maybe Arkansas is a lot better than we were kind of thinking they were. So yeah, that's gonna be great. Sometimes I kind of wish Arkansas was in the Big 12 for basketball at least. I don't know so much about football and stuff, but anytime Arkansas plays these Big 12 teams, I think it's always fun. It's always a good one.
Yeah, and the last game we'll preview, and of course, like we said, we will give predictions for these games on Saturday. But it is Auburn versus Purdue. Auburn, they obviously lost Coach Pearl before the season. I think that might have affected them some as this year has started, but Auburn is a really talented team. They have a ton of athleticism. They actually have Kevin Overton, who was on our team last year. I wish we would have kept him. He would have been a great bench piece for us this year. But he's at Auburn now. He's playing well. They have a bunch of really good guards and forwards once again. But I think that they have the athleticism absolutely to keep up with Purdue's guards and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. But I think this is a matchup where Purdue's bigs with Trey Kaufman-Wren, they have so much size. Every year Purdue has so much size. I think that this is where Purdue might get Auburn, but it's going to be really interesting to see, Jett.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, but I like a lot of what I see from Purdue. So I think Purdue's gonna probably end up maybe not running away with that one, but like I think they'll win that one pretty handily, actually.
Yeah, and we saw Iowa State, dominate Purdue a few weeks ago. So the Big 12 this year is just it's going to be a gauntlet. We better start figuring things out, and hopefully, we can maybe sneak one out on Saturday or something. Yeah. But guys, thank you once again so much for listening to our 10th episode of the Guns Blazin podcast. We are just so thankful for all the support we've gotten, not just from y'all, but from our sponsors, just everyone in the Lubbock community who's shown us support every single episode. And we just ask that once again that you like or subscribe to all things Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcast. And once again, from the Miller Waldrop Studios, guys, Campus Live is your one-stop news source for all things Texas Tech and Lubbock. And make sure to tune in next week. Wreck 'em.
Wreck 'em.
From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.